Welcome back, in-game community. My name is Pierre, and I'm here to help you with your fantasy football waiver wire pickups heading into week 3. So let's first start by talking about the major injuries. Thankfully, there weren't that many to offensive skill players in week 2, but there were a couple of big ones, and of course, the major one is Trey Lance of the San Francisco 49ers. Starting quarterback, a lot of high hopes for him. A lot of people took a chance on him as a starting quarterback, and we'll never know what he could have done maybe in this offense because he is out for the season. It didn't take long early in the game, and it was pretty obvious right away. Carted off, had an air cast around that ankle. It's broken. That means he is done for the season. So the highest paid backup in the league, that is Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, he's going to be your starter going forward. We already know what we're getting with Jimmy G. Is he a viable Trey Lance replacement? I mean, you know what you're getting, which is not nearly the same thing. There's no rushing upside at all with Garoppolo, and he's just a game manager. I mean, he'll maybe get you a 2-touchdown game, 3-touchdown game once in a while, but there's not going to be heavy volume here. Trey Lance was exciting because of that rushing upside. He could throw the deep ball. Jimmy Garoppolo does not throw the deep ball. So look, obviously, you're dropping Trey Lance right away, and then you're going to pick up some other quarterbacks. I'll tell you who I like in a bit. Jimmy Garoppolo, to me, he's not my first choice. All right, in better quarterback news, Justin Herbert, you saw on Thursday night, got banged up at the very end. It's a rib issue, which can be tricky because a lot of that comes down to pain management. He's listed as day-to-day, and with that extra time off, it sounds like he will be ready for week 3. So I wouldn't necessarily go out to pick up a quarterback yet unless we hear something different. It sounds like he'll be good to go, so don't worry too much just yet about Herbert. On the running back front, thankfully no major injuries yet. So James Conner did leave with an ankle issue, didn't play at the end, wasn't part of that big comeback, that surprising comeback by the Cardinals. It doesn't sound like it's anything too severe, so I wouldn't worry, but you do need to make some backup plans because you never know with a running back that could be tricky. Benjamin and Darrell Williams both split time pretty evenly, both saw the exact same number of carries. Darrell Williams had that big run, scored a touchdown toward the end, so he was more effective, but I do think Benjamin is the guy who might get more touches early on if Conner misses. But right now, that's not for sure, so Conner, just kind of be on standby to see if you do need to pick up one of those two guys. Jerry Jeudy is a player who also left pretty early. Looked like he came down hard on his shoulder. A lot of these Twitter doctors were already diagnosing him with a fractured collarbone or sprained AC joint or something in the shoulder area, and it wasn't anything like that at all. In fact, it's a rib issue, and already came back, x-rays negative. So it sounds like Jeudy is maybe in the clear. Of course, we'll see how he is during practice throughout the week. You never know, but right now we might have dodged a bullet with this one, which is good because as we saw, once Jeudy left, it was all Courtland Sutton, which is good if you have Sutton, and there was nobody else. This Broncos offense not looking very good, and they really have no depth at wide receiver. Tim Patrick, of course, already out for the season. KJ Hamler yet to return. If Jeudy is gone, I mean, that really has to make you worried about the state of this Broncos passing offense even more. Back to that Cardinals comeback. Well, it happened because on the very final play, Hunter Renfrow, quality receiver, was knocked down hard, fumbled the ball, and it was a scoop and score. So the thing that besides the insult of the fact that they lost the game, they were winning big in overtime. The Raiders also might lose Hunter Renfrow for a short time because on that hit, he may have suffered a concussion, so he'll be in the protocol this week. This is something to definitely look out for. Now, we saw T. Higgins just clear it pretty quickly, not a problem. Doesn't mean that Renfrow will do the same, so just keep an eye on practice reports, see if he is ready to go for week 3. Now, if he is gone, Mac Hollins all of a sudden becomes the number 2 receiver in Las Vegas. And then on the tight end front, the very end of that Cowboys game, Dalton Schultz left with a knee injury. That's obviously something to worry about. We'll see what it is. It's too early to know whether it's serious or not. Dallas already pretty thin as far as receivers go. At tight end, I mean, there's going to be some options. None of them are really great. In Dallas itself, Jake Ferguson maybe, but that's not a guy you're picking up. I'll tell you about a receiver who I actually do like a little bit better. On to my top 5 waiver wire picks for this week. Number 1, it's pretty clear who it is. It's got to be Garrett Wilson. Only 21% rostered in Yahoo leagues. So this is a rookie we really didn't hear a lot about in training camp, that he was a standout. We heard about Dotson's hands, we heard about Burke's conditioning, we heard about London's athleticism, Just didn't hear a lot about Wilson, and we knew he was a stud coming out of college. We didn't know how this Jets offense would look. Well, I think it's pretty obvious now. They're going to let Flacco cook, and he's throwing for over 300 yards in each of the first 2 games. And in game 2, it was Garrett Wilson's show. He had 14 targets. He went for over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, including a game winner. I think it's pretty obvious he has arrived. And here's the most outstanding stat, which might worry you if you have Elijah Moore, and I have quite a bit of Elijah Moore myself. So far, it has been Garrett Wilson who's the lead receiver. He has a 22% target share as opposed to Moore's 12%. So already Wilson looks like the number 1 receiver in New York, and with a 30-point game in PPR leagues, he's got to be your number 1 pickup. Don't hesitate to dump as much as a quarter of your fab to get him. There's going to be bidding wars, I'm sure. Let's talk about just week 3. If you're streaming and you got options, right now I'm going to actually go with Justin Fields as my top choice. That might sound surprising given the fact that they just lost to the Packers and he threw for all of 70 yards and not a single touchdown. But here's the thing. Here's what Justin Fields did. He ran in for a touchdown, and he was inches away from running in a second one. When they get near the goal line, they're calling Fields' number, and I think he's still got that rushing upside, especially going next week. He's going to face Houston. Look, the Bears have had 2 really tough matchups. Playing against 2 of the top teams from a year ago, record-wise, the 49ers, who have one of the best defenses, and don't forget the weather was terrible in that game. And then week 2, of course, the Packers, who own the Bears, and in a hostile environment. Those are really tough games. Fields will show out better against Houston. Obviously a lesser defense. They've been okay, right? They've held their own, but I think Fields will be fine. So he's my top choice. If he's not available, you can go to a guy like Mariota, who also has rushing upside, or maybe Jared Goff if you think that's going to be a shootout with Minnesota, but I like Fields. All right, back to receiver. I'm going to talk about a Patriots receiver, which surprises me because, man, that passing offense has not looked great. But look, Jacoby Myers is doing kind of what he did last year, and that's commanding a lot of targets because there's not a whole lot else around him. Okay, so he got 13 targets just in week 2, and he caught 9 of them for 95 yards. Here's what Jacoby Myers doesn't do, and that's score touchdowns. And that's why you can't be too high on him. But I do like his chances in week 3 because he plays the Baltimore Ravens, and we saw how that defense just got torched again by Tua. But look, the Baltimore defense was terrible last year. It's clear they're not that much better this year, if at all. So I would say fire up Myers in PPR. He gives you a high floor because he's good for a few catches. And the ceiling, look, maybe he actually gets in the end zone against Baltimore. We know the Ravens can put up points. So this might be a game that we expect a low score, but it turns out to be much higher on the over. All right, I mentioned earlier about Dalton Schultz with that knee issue. Again, don't know for sure what it is, but you already know Michael Gallup has been out. James Washington been out. Mari Cooper is gone. That Dallas receiving core, very thin already. The number 2 receiver who has actually technically been the number 1 receiver is Noah Brown with 10 catches for 158 yards and a touchdown. Yes, CeeDee Lamb's getting more targets, but he's doing less with them. Brown has actually looked pretty good, making some athletic catches. Obviously, there's something that has been lit within him this year. He is making a case for more playing time. I don't think Gallup is back in week 3. If Schultz misses also, we could see even more action from Noah Brown. So don't take for granted the fact that he's put up these numbers. There's a reason, and he's a guy who should be plenty involved once again. Another receiver who's been surprisingly involved, and that is Greg Dortch. It's a guy who's just a special teamer for the last few years, never even made a dent as a receiver. But now, really the Cardinals have no choice. Rondale Moore out again. Of course, DeAndre Hopkins still waiting for that suspension to be over. And the Cardinals are just thin. Look, Andy Isabella didn't suit up also. So Dortch, you know what? He's getting targets and he's making the most of it. Now, in week 1, he was their leading receiver. In week 2, no, he was a distant third. Zach Ertz was back at full health. He was the guy getting 11 targets, leading the way. And then, of course, Marquise Brown. But then Dortch was there, and Dortch is the guy who found the end zone. 55 yards, 4 catches, a touchdown. That'll play. All right, now he's not a must-add, and if Rondale Moore does come back in week 3, which not sure if he will, but if he does, then yeah, that definitely lessens the enthusiasm you would have for Dortch. In fact, he might not even be worth picking up. But right now, given the state of the Cardinals' receiving core, I think Dortch is worth an add. So the guy that you might want to take a chance on if he's out there is Raheem Mostert. And look, last week it looked like Mostert wasn't even going to be involved. It was all Chase Edmonds. And now all of a sudden, it's like Chase Edmonds disappeared and Mostert is the guy. He had 11 carries for 51 yards and 3 catches for 28 yards. At the very least, we thought Edmonds would be somebody who would be that pass catching back. I don't know. The thing is, I'm kind of worried now about this whole backfield in Miami because, Mike McDaniel coming from San Francisco, we saw how they've been using running backs the last few years. Maybe that's transferred. Maybe every week it'll be a different guy. Who knows? Maybe next week it'll be Myles Gaskin. Probably not. But Mostert, look, he's healthy. We know he's a guy who can get chunks of yards. So if he's going to be involved, he is at least worth rostering.